The sun was just beginning to dip below the horizon, casting long shadows over the dusty streets of Jerusalem. I walked alone, my sandals kicking up small clouds of dirt with each step. The city was alive with the murmur of voices, the clatter of carts, and the distant bleating of sheep being herded for the evening. But amidst this ordinary bustle, my heart was heavy with an extraordinary burden. I had always been a seeker, someone who questioned the world around me, the teachings of the scribes, the rituals of the temple. But today, something had shifted within me. I had heard whispers of a man named Jesus, a carpenter from Nazareth, whose words were said to heal the soul and whose touch could mend the broken. Curiosity, mixed with a desperate hope, had driven me to seek him out. As I turned a corner, the crowd thickened, pressing in from all sides. There, in the center of the throng, stood a figure, his presence commanding yet gentle. His eyes, when they met mine, seemed to pierce through the layers of my skepticism, reaching into the very core of my being. "Who are you?" I whispered, not expecting an answer, yet he seemed to hear me over the noise. His smile was warm, inviting, as if he had been waiting for me all along. "Come, follow me," he said simply, extending his hand. The invitation was both startling and magnetic. Around me I could see others, their faces lit with a mixture of awe and peace, some familiar, others strangers. Yet in that moment, we were all bound by an invisible thread of longing, of seeking something more than what our daily lives offered. I hesitated, my mind racing with doubts. What would my family say? My friends? Could I leave behind the life I knew for the unknown? My feet felt rooted to the ground, the weight of my decision pressing down on me. I glanced around, catching sight of a familiar face in the crowd. It was Simon, a fisherman from Galilee, his eyes wide with the same mixture of fear and wonder that I felt. He nodded at me, a silent encouragement to take the step forward. Taking a deep breath, I reached out, my hand trembling as it met Jesus. His grip was firm, reassuring, and in that instant, a sense of peace washed over me, like a cool breeze on a hot day. As we began to walk, the crowd parted, making way for us. Jesus spoke softly, his voice carrying a melody that seemed to resonate with the deepest parts of my soul. "The path ahead is not easy, but it is filled with purpose," he said, his words weaving through the air like a promise. We walked through the narrow streets, the familiar sights of Jerusalem now tinged with a new light. The marketplace, usually a place of haggling and chaos, seemed quieter, more reflective. A woman selling olives paused, her eyes following us, a look of curiosity and perhaps recognition in her gaze. I thought of my home, the small room where my family would be waiting for me. My father, stern yet loving, would be expecting me to take over the family trade soon. My mother, always with a gentle word and a prayer, would worry about my sudden departure. And then there was Leah, my betrothed, whose laughter had always been my solace. What would they think of this sudden change in my life's direction? Jesus seemed to sense my turmoil. "Do not fear for those you leave behind," he said, as if reading my thoughts. "They will understand in time. Your journey will bring light to them as well." We stopped at the edge of the city, where the walls gave way to the open fields. Here the air was fresher, the sounds of the city fading into a distant hum. Jesus turned to face me and the small group that had gathered. "Here, we will rest for the night," he announced, gesturing towards a grove of olive trees. As we settled under the trees, I watched as others in the group shared their stories, their reasons for following Jesus. There was a tax collector, despised by many, yet here he was, seeking redemption. A woman, known for her past, now seeking forgiveness. Each story was a thread in the tapestry of our collective journey. That night, under the canopy of stars, I felt a shift within me. The doubts didn't disappear, but they were joined by a burgeoning sense of purpose. I knew the road ahead would test my faith, my resolve, and my heart. But for now, In this moment, I was where I was meant to be, following a man whose very presence promised transformation. As I lay down to sleep, I whispered a silent prayer, not just for myself, but for all those whose lives would intersect with ours on this journey. The night was still, but within me, a storm of change was brewing, ready to reshape my life in ways I could only begin to imagine. The morning sun broke through the branches of the olive trees, casting dappled light across our makeshift camp. I awoke to the sound of soft conversations and the rustling of leaves. My body felt heavy, not from the hard ground, but from the weight of the decision I had made. As I sat up, I noticed Jesus was already awake, speaking quietly with Simon and a few others. His calm demeanor was a stark contrast to the storm of thoughts swirling in my mind. I joined them, feeling a mix of apprehension and curiosity. Jesus turned to me, his eyes filled with an understanding that seemed to reach beyond words. "Today, we will face challenges," he said, his voice steady. "But remember, it is through adversity that faith is tested and strengthened." We broke our fast with simple bread and water, the group now numbering about 12, each with their own story of seeking something more. As we prepared to move on, a figure approached from the direction of Jerusalem. It was Leah, her face etched with concern and confusion. "Isaac," she called out, her voice trembling as she reached me. "Your mother sent me. She's worried, and so am I. What has come over you? Why leave everything behind?" Her words pierced through the newfound resolve I had felt. I looked at Jesus, seeking guidance, but he only nodded, giving me space to speak. "Leah," I began, my voice low, "I've found something. Someone who speaks to the deepest part of me. I must follow this path, even if it leads me away from what we've planned." Her eyes filled with tears, not of anger, but of a sorrowful understanding. And what of us? What of our future? Jesus stepped forward then, his presence comforting. "Leah, your love for Isaac is a testament to the goodness in your heart. His journey will not diminish what you share. Rather, it might enrich it in ways you cannot yet see." Leah looked between us, her expression softening. "I will trust in your words, Jesus, and in Isaac's heart." She took my hands, squeezing them tightly. "Go, but remember, you carry my love with you." As she turned to leave, the weight of her sacrifice bore down on me, yet it also fortified my resolve. Jesus watched her go, then turned back to us. "Let us proceed. There are many who need to hear our message." Our journey took us through villages where the sick lay by the roadside, their eyes hollow with pain. Jesus approached each one, his touch gentle, his words soothing. I watched in awe as ailments seemed to dissolve under his care. But not all were receptive. In one village, a group of Pharisees confronted us, their faces stern. "Who gives you the authority to heal on the Sabbath?" one demanded, his voice sharp with accusation. Jesus, unfazed, replied, "Is it lawful on the Sabbath to do good or to do harm, to save life or to kill?" His question hung in the air, challenging their rigid interpretations. The tension escalated as some villagers began to argue in our favor, while others sided with the Pharisees. The crowd grew restless, and I felt the fear of conflict rising. Jesus, however, remained serene. "Let us leave this place," he said quietly, leading us away before any violence could erupt. As we walked, the group's morale dipped. Doubts crept in, not just about our safety, but about the path we had chosen. Simon, who had been quiet, finally spoke up. "Lord, we are but few, and the opposition is many. How can we hope to spread your message against such resistance?" Jesus stopped, turning to face us all. "It is not by numbers or force that we will prevail, but by the truth and love we carry. Remember, the mustard seed, though small, grows into the largest of trees. Our faith must be like that seed." His words were a balm, yet the challenges continued. That evening, as we rested by a small stream, a leper approached. his body wrapped in rags, his voice desperate. "Master, if you are willing, you can make me clean." The group recoiled slightly, but Jesus stepped forward, touching the man without hesitation. "I am willing," he said, and the leper's skin began to clear, his eyes filling with tears of joy and disbelief. This act of compassion, so simple yet profound, reminded us of why we followed. However, it also drew attention. News of Jesus' miracles spread, and with it, the scrutiny from religious leaders intensified. As night fell, I lay awake, pondering the day's events. The path was indeed fraught with obstacles, not just from external forces, but from within ourselves. Yet in the quiet, I felt a growing conviction. This journey was not just about following Jesus. It was about discovering the depth of my own faith, testing my resolve, and learning to love beyond my fears. The road ahead was uncertain, but for the first time, I felt truly alive, engaged in a purpose that transcended my own life. As the first light of dawn crept over the horizon, casting a soft glow over our camp, I found myself restless, my mind replaying the events of the previous day. The encounter with the Pharisees had left a bitter taste, their accusations echoing in my thoughts. But it was Jesus' calm response that lingered most vividly. His words about the mustard seed, giving me a strange sense of comfort amidst the brewing storm of doubt. We gathered our belongings, the air crisp with the promise of a new day. Jesus led us toward a larger town, known for its bustling market and the presence of many who sought healing. The path was rugged, the terrain uneven, much like the journey of our faith, I mused. As we approached the town, the atmosphere changed. The usual sounds of commerce were there, but there was an undercurrent of tension, whispers of our arrival having preceded us. People began to gather, some out of curiosity, others with a desperate hope in their eyes. A woman, her face etched with sorrow, pushed through the crowd, her child in her arms, frail and listless. "Please, Rabbi," she pleaded, her voice breaking. "My child has not eaten in days. Can you help?" Jesus knelt beside her, his touch gentle on the child's forehead. "Your faith has brought you here," he said, his voice carrying a warmth that seemed to envelop us all. "Let this child be healed." As he spoke, the child's eyes fluttered open, a spark of life returning to them. The crowd gasped, some in awe, others in disbelief. But not everyone was moved by this miracle. A group of local leaders, their robes rich with authority, approached with stern expressions. "You disrupt the order of our town with these displays," one of them declared, his voice dripping with disdain. "What right do you have to challenge our laws, our traditions?" Jesus stood, his presence unyielding yet serene. "I challenge no law, but I bring a message of love, of healing. Is it not written that the Sabbath was made for man, not man for the Sabbath?" The debate grew heated, with voices rising in both support and opposition. I felt the tension like a physical force, my heart pounding with the fear of what might come next. Simon, standing beside me, whispered, "This could turn ugly, Isaac." Just then a man, his clothes tattered, his face gaunt, stumbled forward. "I was blind, and now I see," he proclaimed, his voice loud enough to cut through the noise. "This man, Jesus, he healed me. What laws do you speak of when he brings sight to the blind?" The crowd murmured, the tide of opinion shifting. Yet the leaders were not swayed. "This is blasphemy," one of them shouted, his voice rising above the murmurs. "We cannot allow such disruption." The atmosphere grew thick with the threat of violence. I could see the fear in the eyes of some of our group, the resolve in others. Jesus, however, remained a beacon of calm amidst the storm. He raised his hand, silencing the crowd with a gesture that seemed to command the very air around us. "Listen," Jesus began, his voice clear and resonant. "I have not come to bring discord, but to fulfill the law with love. The laws you speak of are meant to guide, not to bind. If healing on the Sabbath brings life, Then let it be done in the spirit of the Sabbath." The crowd, now a mix of supporters and skeptics, quieted, drawn in by his words. The leaders, however, were not so easily swayed. "You speak of love, but your actions sow confusion and dissent," one retorted. Jesus stepped closer to them, his eyes filled with compassion rather than confrontation. "The confusion you feel is not from my teachings, but from the fear of change. I ask you, have you ever seen a man healed and felt joy, or a child restored to health and felt peace?" The question hung in the air, challenging their hearts more than their minds. A moment of silence stretched, filled only by the soft rustling of leaves and the distant sounds of the town waking up. Then, from the back of the crowd, an elderly man stepped forward, his voice trembling with emotion. "I was there when my grandson was healed by this man," he said, pointing at Jesus. "I felt joy, yes, and peace. What law would you have us follow that denies such miracles?" His words sparked a shift. The crowd began to murmur in agreement, the tension easing slightly. The leaders, seeing the tide turning, exchanged looks of uncertainty. Jesus continued, "The path of faith is not always clear, nor is it always easy. But it is through acts of kindness, through healing and love, that we truly honor the spirit of the law. Let us not be divided by fear or tradition, but united in the pursuit of what is good and true." His words were like seeds planted in the hearts of those listening. The leaders, though still skeptical, seemed to soften. One of them, the eldest, spoke up. "We will not stand in the way of healing, but we will watch. Your actions must prove your words." Jesus nodded, accepting the challenge. "Then watch and see the truth unfold." As the crowd began to disperse, some lingered, seeking Jesus' touch or his blessing. I watched as he moved among them, his hands gentle, his words like a soothing balm to their weary souls. I stood back, observing, feeling the weight of the journey we had embarked upon. Each touch, each word from Jesus seemed to ripple through the crowd, touching hearts, mending spirits. As the sun climbed higher, casting a warm glow over the town, the crowd thinned, leaving behind a sense of peace where there had been tension. Jesus turned to us, his followers, his expression one of quiet satisfaction. "Let us move on," he said, his voice soft but firm. "There are others who need to hear the message of love and forgiveness." We walked out of the town, the path before us winding through hills and valleys, each step taking us further from the familiar and deeper into the unknown. The landscape changed, the air grew cooler, and the sounds of civilization faded into the natural symphony of the wilderness. That evening, as we set up camp near a gentle stream, don't forget to subscribe, like, and comment if you enjoyed this story. This will help us create more engaging stories for you.